You've seen Saving Private Ryan and Dunkirk, but I guarantee almost no American has watched these 10 British war films. These aren't the typical war movies. One was banned for showing British Nazis, one so realistic you'll think it's a documentary, and some were made by actual soldiers just months after battle. If you think you've seen every angle of World War II, these movies will absolutely change your mind. Let's start with probably the wildest what-if anyone put on screen back then. It Happened Here is set in an alternate Britain, one where the Nazis actually succeeded in occupying the country. You're following Pauline, an Irish nurse trying to survive in a world where suddenly the normal rules are gone and everything is tainted by fear, propaganda, and collaboration. At first, she's just trying to keep her job at the hospital, but you watch her slowly realize the horror she's surrounded by. What makes this film really something is who made it. Kevin Brownlow and Andrew Mallow started this thing when they were just teenagers. Brownlow was 18, Mallow was 16, and a total military history nerd. He started out just making sure the German uniforms looked right, then ended up co-directing. No money, no big studio backing, just shooting on weekends for 8 years straight. A volunteer cast, a crew basically learning on the job, and they still pulled off a 100-minute feature that's basically legendary among independent filmmakers. It Happened Here is shot in black and white with fake newsreels and battle scenes staged right on English streets. The rallies are staged too, with British fascist symbols, which did not go over quietly in 1960s England. Some officials and critics hated the film for even daring to show Brits as Nazis or collaborators. There was real pushback, and for a while this was about as censored as British war films got. Next up, a movie that drops you right into Britain's biggest fear during the war, Nazis Hiding Among Us. Went the Day Well takes a peaceful English village and turns it inside out as Nazi paratroopers show up disguised as British soldiers. There's nothing cozy or safe here. The violence is matter-of-fact and for 1942, honestly pretty shocking. The whole village bands together to fight back, and the film doesn't flinch from the brutality. This was made at a time when the real threat of invasion had already faded, but the film still worked as a warning. Be careful who you trust. Careless talk costs lives. It hit nerves back then, and when they restored and re-released it in 2010, critics pointed out just how subversive it really is. Director Cavalcanti, who called this his best Ealing film, summed it up like this: "You take ordinary, kind people and put them under the pressure of war and they become absolute monsters. That's what sticks with you." The Cruel Sea is one of those films that doesn't need a villain. The Atlantic Ocean is enough. It's all about the crew of a British corvette trying to protect convoys from U-boats. Jack Hawkins plays Commander Erickson, this humane but exhausted captain, with Donald Sinden as his green first officer. The movie follows them through storms, attacks, and just the endless grind of wartime duty. There's a moment in this film that sums it up. Erickson has to decide whether to attack a U-boat knowing there are British sailors in the water above. He does it, and it haunts him for the rest of the story. The Cruel Sea was a massive hit in Britain, biggest box office draw of 1953, and it made Jack Hawkins the country's top star that year. Veterans praised its realism, and it even spawned a weird little Navy tradition: Cruel Sea night screenings where new sailors have to watch it in life jackets while the crew throws water at them whenever there's a storm on screen. That's about as high praise as you get. The Gentle Sex is about 7 British women from all sorts of backgrounds who join up with the Auxiliary Territorial Service. Leslie Howard co-directed and narrated, and the story takes these women from training camp to actual military duty, driving lorries, manning anti-aircraft guns, you name it. Howard's narration has this dry, almost winking tone, and the film mixes humor with a genuine respect for what these women went through. It was shot with a kind of semi-documentary style, showing actual drills and Army life, so it feels authentic. This was Howard's last film. He was killed when his plane was shot down just weeks after the premiere, possibly targeted by the Nazis. The Gentle Sex stands as a tribute to British women, showing how the war changed their lives and how vital they became to the effort. Retrospectives call it a cultural treasure, and it really is. Funny, strange, and nothing else quite like it. Now this is a classic. David Lean and Noel Coward team up to make one of the most moving Royal Navy dramas ever filmed. In Which We Serve tells the story of a ship, literally, by following the crew of HMS Torrin, based on Lord Mountbatten's own destroyer. It opens with the ship being sunk in battle and then uses flashbacks to tell the stories of the captain, the crew, and their families. Lean was just getting started as a director, but the film's impact was immediate. Audiences had never seen naval combat or the personal cost of war shown so honestly. There are scenes with survivors clinging to rafts, waiting for rescue, and it's not sugar-coated. The film earned Oscar nominations for Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay, losing both to Casablanca, and regular moviegoers were just floored by the realism and emotional weight. The Admiralty had mixed feelings. Some joked it should be called In Which We Sink, but it's still ranked among the best British films ever made. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp is an epic that covers not just one war, but several, as it follows the military and romantic life of a British officer from the Boer War through World War II. Powell and Pressburger didn't do things halfway. They recreated multiple historical eras in incredible detail, even getting original World War I rifles and machine guns for the 1915 scenes. No official help from the War Office. Churchill himself thought the film was a problem, that it mocked the British Army, and he actually tried to shut it down. But what you get is this huge, sprawling film that's not just about war, but about how people and armies change over time. There was controversy for sure. Some critics thought it was too soft on the British military. Others called it the best thing to come out of a British studio. The public admired the mix of humor, romance, and sadness. And years later, Martin Scorsese helped restore it to its full Technicolor glory, so now you can actually see it the way it was meant to be seen. The Way Ahead is basically a making of a soldier movie. Starts right after Dunkirk. A bunch of random British guys get drafted, most of them clueless, and end up molded into an actual fighting unit. Directed by Carol Reed, the film grew out of a short training film, then got expanded to feature length. David Niven stars. He'd literally just come back from active service himself, and the film balances light, sometimes goofy moments with real respect for what these troops went through. When the climax comes, the unit has to hold off a German attack in North Africa, and you see how far they've come. The final shot, soldiers charging into battle, refusing to back down, was so iconic the BBC's Dad's Army copied it decades later. The movie came out on D-Day in the UK, and for all its cliches, it nails the spirit of ordinary people facing extraordinary times. This one's a true story. The Wooden Horse shows how British prisoners pulled off one of the most inventive escapes of World War II. The trick was a hollow wooden vaulting horse. Every day, the prisoners would lug it out into the yard and start exercising on it, while one of them was hidden inside, digging a tunnel underneath. The film sticks pretty close to what really happened, even shooting some scenes in Germany near the real surrender sites. Critics praised it for its low-key, realistic style. It's not a flashy thriller, just steady, patient, and absolutely nerve-wracking. Turns out they weren't even the first to try the wooden horse trick. Another group of prisoners did it in 1941, but nobody knew that when this film was made. Either way, it became a box office hit in 1950, with audiences loving the authenticity and quiet tension. Millions Like Us moves away from the battlefield, focusing instead on the home front, specifically on Celia Crowson, a shy young woman sent to work in a wartime factory. She ends up surrounded by women from all walks of life, from cheerful working-class types to one snobbish upper-middle-class woman forced to adapt. The film doesn't glamorize anything. It shows the repetitive, grinding work of building airplanes, the struggle with rationing, and the mix of sudden romance and sudden loss. It was made to boost morale, but it's also a time capsule of how millions of Britons lived and changed during the war. It's ensemble, not star-driven, and for audiences in 1943, it felt real in a way few other films did. Finally, fires were started. This is as close to documentary as you could get without dropping the word drama entirely. Shot with real firemen playing themselves, it follows one day and night with an auxiliary fire service crew during the Blitz. You get to know the men, sharing tea, singing songs before everything turns in a flash when the air raid hits and they're suddenly fighting for their lives. No stock footage here. Every fire, every explosion was staged for the film, and the line between what's real and what's reconstructed just disappears. The authenticity is still shocking, both moving and terrifying. This is one of those films that doesn't look like much on paper, but when you watch it, you realize you're seeing history almost as it happened.